So again, we're a public benefit corporation. It's an entity in Colorado that you can have a small business be. That's basically a halfway point between a for-profit business and a nonprofit business. And the reason that we chose it is because it allows us to put in our articles of incorporation and our bylaws that we value the community and the environment over our bottom line. So that way we can make choices that will help those things rather than just money-based. And if this company were to ever leave my hands, I would want it to continue like that. So that's why I started my company that way. So we're going to do a brief overview of what is compost, because that's what we're going to be talking about all of today. And it is the end process of decomposition of organic waste. So food scraps, yard waste, leaves, branches, wood chips, anything that was grown out of the ground can be composted, as well as any kind of food that you can eat can be composted. It does a lot of things when you add it to your garden or your landscape. One of the main benefits for us in Colorado is that it helps with water retention. So if you mix compost with the clay-like soil, it will no longer run off. It will actually get absorbed. And so that's a really nice benefit for us here in Colorado. It does all of these other things. It really helps with plant growth. It's a really great tool to use for your own gardens at home, as well as agriculturally. We're finding there's studies being done that adding compost to agricultural fields is increasing yields. It's decreasing bug problems. It's decreasing plant diseases and such. And so, so it's a really cool product that we make out of organic materials. And so this is typically what a compost will look like. These have all been screened. So all of the big chunks have been taken out. You can see it's a dark brown material. It looks pretty much like dirt, but it does have different qualities than regular dirt. So you have to make that distinction. In this one right here, in the upper left-hand corner, you can see little white specks, and those are actually eggshells. Eggshells take a really long time to decompose, but they do break down into these tiny pieces. And eggshells, the fun fact about those is that they break down at the same rate that plants uptake calcium. So if you just put eggshells in your garden, which a lot of people do, the way that they break down is exactly what your plants need as far as their calcium needs go. So I think that's pretty cool. All right, I'm going to sit on my high horse for a second because this is something that bothers me extremely. Food waste is not compost. This right here, these apples, this is not compost. People will say, I'm going to go put it in my compost bin. This bin here, this is not compost. This is food waste. And the reason why I'm a stickler on this is because there is so much confusion in this industry about what this is. If you see here, these bins here that say compost, this isn't compost. They're not asking you to put compost in, because if we go back, are we asking you to put this kind of stuff in the bin? No. We're asking you to put food waste in the bin. So in my opinion, these should all be labeled food waste. If you look in this bin right here, you can see what looks like some kind of paper trash thing. And that's because people literally don't know what this means. This is for food waste, not anything else. And people have a lot of issues with knowing the difference. And so I'm just a stickler about this because it bothers me that there is so much confusion. And one of the ways that we can stop that confusion is just labeling things correctly. This is also not compost. This is not that dark brown pretty stuff. This is food waste that is composting. This is actually one of my sites from earlier maybe this month probably. We got a bunch of these apples, and this is the time of year that we get actually a bunch of this kind of stuff. And we chop it up and we put it in the pile, and then it's composting, but it's not finished compost until it has gone through the composting process. So the composting process, there's two kinds, two main kinds at least. There's aerobic and anaerobic. Aerobic means with air, anaerobic means without air. Most composting processes that are commercial or backyard are going to be aerobic. There are quite a few anaerobic. Those are used more so in very large situations or in plant-based, like when I say plant-based, I mean like factory-based situations. So a lot of like meat producers will have an anaerobic composter on site for the waste that's produced there, as well as other kind of manufacturers that have that kind of waste. And you'll see why in just a moment. So the aerobic composting process, there's technically 4 phases. Well, there's 2 phases, but those can be broken down into 2 parts. So these are also all of the parameters that you have to look for when composting. And this is why composting can get kind of complicated, is that you actually have to know all of this stuff. You test your befores, you test your afters, you test your durings. And, these are kind of general guidelines, like, for example, the pH, it typically increases. We start with a more acidic base especially with food waste, and it gets more basic as it composts and breaks down. And you'll end up with a nice, usually a pretty neutral product by the end. Same with all the other ones. They usually either stay similar or they increase or decrease depending on the parameter. The phases is just like this chart here. This is a very typical composting phase for aerobic composting, no matter how you're doing it either. There's quite a few different ways to aerobic compost. The first phase is when you're like getting everything mixed together here and in the right ratios for your recipe. And that's when your temperatures start to increase. You want to make sure you have all of these other things in line with what you're looking for in your compost, and that temperature is going to increase by itself. It's not something that you do. It's not something that you add heat to. It's literally the correct microbes and the correct formulation in the recipe that is going to create that heat and get it to the next phase, which is thermophilic phase. Thermophilic phase means there's usually a line here that is at the 131 degree mark. Anything at 131 or above is considered thermophilic phase, and that is the phase that is going to that you're going to get a lot of benefits from as far as making a clean compost. A clean compost is something that does not have any pathogens in it. It does not have any seeds in it that would sprout, so they're all dead. And those kinds of things. And so once you hit that 131 point, there's different acceptable like days that it needs to be at certain points for different methods. Like we'll look at some different methods very shortly here, but like an in-vessel method is going to be different than a windrow method, which is going to be different from a covered aerated static pile method, etc. So that's why there's, this is a general timeline, because this changes based on the method that you're using. So basically you're going to hit that, and then a lot of composting will do this actually a few times. So it'll go up and then down, and that's usually because you're turning it, you're aerating it, maybe you're watering it, etc., keeping within these parameters. And it's going to go up and down a few times within the thermophilic phase. Once you've completed the standards for your process, it's going to start coming down. This is the mesophilic phase, and this is when all of those good bacteria that is going to create a living soil are going to come into your compost. And so as long as you got all of these parameters correctly, and you see this arc of a thing going in your compost, then this is going to be a very, very beneficial stage that you're going to watch intently, because you're going to watch it slowly come down. So this means you literally are letting it sit. Again, this timeline can be different for different processes or even different processors. Some people only let their compost sit a month and then they, sell it or use it or whatever. Some people let it sit up to a year or even 2 years, and then they use it or sell it. So it just depends. The last phase is the maturation phase, and that is when you don't have any more temperature variations. It's going to stay pretty standard. It's not going to get hot anymore, even if you let it sit. And that's going to mean you have a stable compost that is ready to use and it is available for plant uptake. If you give plants composts or composting processes over here, they're not going to be able to actually uptake those nutrients. You really have to wait until it's here when it's stable. And when it's stable, that's what you get from the stores that are bagged and stuff. Most of those places know what they're doing and will only bag a stable product. So these are the different types of composting facilities. This is not an extensive list. This is like the majority of what I could think of. We have a lot of turned windrow systems in our state. Those are going to be the bigger sites because they require more space. Because as you can see, there's lots of different piles. You have to maintain, monitor every single one. You have different areas for mixing. You have different areas for curing. This one even has a retention pond. So when it gets super stormy and rainy, the water that comes off of this stuff goes into this pond instead of into the outer areas, the perimeter where it could be, it could be city streets, it could be agricultural land, etc. And you don't want that leakage. So this type of facility requires a few things. We're going to talk about that later in our legislative part of this discussion. But this type of facility takes a lot to get started. It takes upfront costs as well as a lot of different kinds of equipment. But we have quite a few of them in the state of Colorado. Most of our industrial composting facilities are a windrow type system. Static piles are typically what you're going to see in someone's backyard. So a lot of people have these types of things where it's just like chicken wire or something, and you just put in your compost as you go, or your food waste or your yard waste as you go to turn it into compost. And you can monitor it using those same parameters we just talked about in your own backyard. You probably won't be doing things like bulk density or pH or a couple of the other things, but what you will be monitoring is temperature and moisture, because those are the two main ones to be focused on when you're composting. This can have a few different looks to it. It could be like one of those black plastic boxes that's in your backyard that you just throw stuff into, shut it, and don't think about it. It could be literally just a pile. It doesn't have to be encased in anything. And I know of one off the top of my head of an industrial composter that uses this form of static pile at their site. And so what they do is they do this type of thing. They put all their ingredients together and they put them in huge, huge, huge piles, and they just let them sit. They do not touch them. They do not move them. They do not rotate them, turn them, etc. They literally just sit there for like 6 to 12 months. And then when they open them back up, everything should be composted in there, and then they can let it cure. Another thing that's becoming very popular right now is this bunker system. These are very expensive, obviously, because you have all of this infrastructure that you need to put in. But they're becoming, more of the norm because you don't need as much space as these windrow facilities. And they have extra technology. A lot of these are being powered by an aerated static pile system. So if you look at these two bunkers over here, you can see these lines in the ground. That is going to be typically an in-ground aeration system as well as an in-ground water system. So everything that comes out of the pile will go into these drains and then either out to your reservoir or into a tank for holding that you can use later. So you don't have any of those leakage problems again. These are, again, maintained, each pile has to be maintained by itself. You build and put, and you move them over as they mature, etc. And these are becoming definitely more in fashion. I know A1 Organics specifically is putting one in right now. They should be up and running very soon with one of these. And this is what they're going to be using exclusively for their food waste. This is a kind of a version of a bunker system. This is called a covered aerated static pile. This is what I have at my facility that I've just installed. And it looks very much like this. You have these big piles. But then you have this cover over it. And then you have, so these big piles, they can be on something like this, like an in-ground aeration system, or they can just be a pipe with holes in it. And so that's the kind we have. It's called a mobile system. So we could actually move it around if we needed to. It's not like in concrete that you can't move. So typically there'll be a pipe down here, down the center of it. And then on one end, and it'll be on the other end because you don't see anything over here. That pipe will be attached to some sort of blower. That blower is very much just like a bouncy house blower, honestly. You know, you can get fancy with it, but like that's pretty much all it is. And then you put that on at certain rates of aeration, depending on your climate, depending on, you know, how like wet your material is versus how dry it is, how, you know, porous or what your bulk density is for your compost, etc. And you can see right now the air is on in this one because it looks kind of like a bouncy house. But this tarp here, this is called a gore cover. And this is kind of showing like, I think it's 20,000 times smaller than like an air particle can get through or something. It's something, or a water molecule can get through. So it keeps in the smells. So these are actually getting much more popular in urban settings, because they keep in any kind of, you know, basically any kind of smells that come off of the composting process, which is very natural. But they are always pinned down on the sides, so that way things can't escape. Water cannot get through, so it actually keeps the water in once you have put your moisture, your correct moisture into your feedstock. It's going to stay there. Whereas in things like this and this and this, it actually evaporates, and you might have to add more water later. So this is actually becoming a more sustainable thing for water saving in composting, and that's partially the reason that we invested in it. The next one is vermicomposting. This is something I am not an expert at. Worms are like pets, and most of the time it's done on a small scale like this at someone's home in like a homemade bin. And your worms will eat your food waste. However, they're picky. They don't eat all kinds of food waste. So that's something to remember when vermicomposting. There are commercial vermicomposters where they have this on just a very large scale. It's a very different type of composting because you have to look for different things. It doesn't go through the thermophilic phase because that would kill the worms. So it's a much different type of composting. And like I said, I'm not an expert on that. I just know a little bit. The last one here is in vessel. So this is the kind of thing, like this is probably sitting out of some sort of, it could be a school, it could be a factory, but basically you have a place to put stuff in. It will get fed into this like barrel type looking thing. And it's going to go through the thermophilic process. It's going to get really hot. It's probably going to be somehow it's going to be manipulated. So this one kind of looks like it might turn. So that way all of the stuff within it will get mixed together and kind of get agitated and break down as time goes. And then there's usually a place over here where you'll get a finished product out. Like I said, these come in all different shapes, sizes, and looks. I picked this photo because it's very obvious like how this works. Other ones aren't as obvious, but there are, like, for example, JBL, which is the meat processing plant, has a huge one of these for their meat products. And it goes in, and this is the only one that has absolutely no smell to it because it's kept in an airtight vessel. It is not aerobic. This is the only anaerobic composting type on that we have an example of right now. And basically, it's great for the smells and things. However, if you're looking for a better finished product that's going to help things like agricultural and gardens and things, you're going to want an aerated because it goes through that mesophilic process to get all of those good bacteria in it. There are obviously different opinions on that, but my opinion is the aerated type of systems are going to produce a better product. Oops. So this is how Compost Queen started. these are literally just pellets, and we put food scraps in and we mixed our recipe together with some other stuff. It could be, we have some manures, we have some dirt, we have some hay, etc. And we water it and we let it sit there and we turn it every once in a while. These ones, as we were growing, we were turning maybe once every other month. We currently turn about once every 2 weeks because of our increase in one of our increase of capacity and two, our increase in customers. Here's some more. We have sites at a lot of different farms around town, and that's how we started as he's doing the CESQ route, which is the exempt facility route through the state of Colorado. You can only have so much at one site at one time, which is why they're small. They're just these, literally these stalls. But as you can see, it can have any kind of look to it. It can be very different at each place. We did what, based on the space that we were allowed to use at each farm, as well as how much we were expecting to compost from the farm there. So like this farm was much bigger. We were expecting a lot more to go through the system from the farm. Whereas this one had a lot less. And so that's the differences in theirs. This one, we were literally out in a horse pasture, so we would have visitors. But yeah, these can be done like anywhere that is agriculturally based or even industrially based. And so this is actually our new site. You can see our pipes coming out. We have concrete blocks to kind of differentiate our different places for our facility. And all of these things were bought by our grant. So we've got our tractor, our front loader. It's a nice big girl, much bigger than our other one. We got this trommel, which sifts our final product. So that way we don't have to do it by hand anymore, which is a huge difference. And then this pipe system, this covered aerated static pile system. If you weren't there when I spoke earlier, this is what we just started this week. So that's why I don't have pictures of it with the covers on it yet. We literally started it on Monday and we have a full cover on as of this morning. So didn't have time to take a picture of that, but we'll talk more about my rant in a little bit. So the laws and legislations about composting in Colorado can all be found here. It's to the CDPHE 6 CCR, blah, blah, blah. And section 14, that is the composting section. That is where you're going to be able to find everything you're looking for. I am not an expert at this stuff, policy and regulations. If you have questions about these things, you should contact the CDPHE person that does composting. His name is Jace Driver. And he can answer any of your questions regarding any of this. But briefly, just to go over this, we're going to start here with feedstock types. There are 3 types. The first one is just agricultural waste, vegetative waste, or yardscaping waste. That's called type 1. The next one is going to be your food waste, your animal waste, etc. That's going to be called type 2. And then type 3 is biosolids, or things that are coming out of wastewater treatment plants, that kind of stuff. And so there's 3 different types because that is how we differentiate between the different classes of facilities. So class 1 facility, you can have under 50,000 cubic yards of type 1, or you can have under 5,000 cubic yards of type 2, and it has to be less than 2 acres in size. There's a couple other things that go with this, such as like universities. If you produce it on site, you can compost it on site, and that will be under this level. But it's kind of a special situation there. This is actually going to be changing. So in 2024, they are going to change this second thing here to under 5,000 cubic yards of type 1 and 2. And I don't know for sure, but we have to ask Jace Driver if they're going to take off this 2 acres in size thing. But I do know that this is going to be class 1 will be 1 and 2, and you don't have to go through the extra facility requirements that are going to be required for class 2 or class 3 type. Class 2 type is basically vegetative waste and manures. So it's specifically made to be composting manures. In order to do that, you have to have what's called an EDOP. That is a engineering design and operating process, I think. I could be wrong, but something like that. And that takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of money. You literally have to hire engineers. You have to hire stormwater experts, electricians, all of these things to get your facility this kind of class permit. It takes a lot of upfront costs. And same with the class 3. So basically class 3 can do anything, but you have to have this EDOP in place. And I've spoken with people who are trying to develop class 3s, and they're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars just on the EDOP. And that doesn't mean, there's no boots on the ground. There is nothing being done at a facility yet. You're literally creating this plan to develop your facility. The other one is an exempt facility. This is the kind of facilities that I run. They're called CESQ, which is this conditionally exempt small quantity. So as you can see, you can do 100 cubic yards of vegetative, or you can do 100 cubic yards of vegetative and under 5 cubic yards of type 2. So that would be like your food wastes. Or if you're in vessel, like we kind of talked about, you can do 100 cubic yards and 10 cubic yards of food waste. Now, if you know what a cubic yard is, you know that this is not big numbers. These are actually quite small. This is why I have multiple facilities, because I was staying within this limit of this number 2, of under 5 cubic yards of food waste at each facility. This is also changing in 2024. It is going to change to 20 cubic yards, whether it's in vessel or not, of type 2. So that's going to give us a lot of benefits moving forward for this type of facility. You don't need any kind of EDOP plan. You don't really need anything, because you're at such a small quantity that you're not going to be doing anything detrimental for the environment around you, or anything like that. You're also not going to be creating a lot of smells and things. People shouldn't be concerned about you at this level. I like this one because you can have multiples and it's not hard to get. All you have to do is literally submit a form to the CDPHE and you'll get approved. All of these other ones, you have to do a couple other things. This one you didn't used to, but when it changes, you are going to have like a facility closure plan, I believe, and a couple other things. Again, Jace Driver is going to be the expert on that. But yeah, so this is the easiest to get, but you do have to stay within the parameters. This one's going to be the second easiest, but you're going to be able to do a lot more. You're going to go up to 5,000 instead of just 20. And then these are much harder to get because of the types of things you have to do to create your facility. There are a couple new laws that are going to be enacted or just have been enacted in the state of Colorado. The one that I'm excited about is this one, the SB 23-253. This is the compost. Oh, I probably should have labeled these. I'm sorry. It's the compostable labeling law. Basically, this is going into action because there is so much confusion, again, about what is compostable and what is not, which is wreaking havoc at the facilities because they are collecting so much contamination. Contaminations are basically anything that is not compostable. So it's plastics, trash, glass, recyclables, anything that people think could be compostable that aren't. And so, there's a lot of stuff out there right now that has the word compostable on it, but they literally just slapped it on. It hasn't been tested. No one actually knows if it's compostable, if once it breaks down, if those particles become, feedstock for the microbes. That's kind of the basis of what compostable means. Or if they turn into microplastics, because if they turn into microplastics, that means it's not compostable. That means it's biodegradable, but not compostable, potentially. There's a lot of rules going around that right now, a lot of different opinions. But this law basically is going into effect. It's saying that anything that is labeled compostable in the state of Colorado has to be third-party tested. So you'll have to have the certification through a third party that states that your product is actually compostable. And it also must have the correct markings and colorations. So I can't remember what color they decided. I think it's green and brown or something, or tan. But once this goes into effect on the 1st, anything that looks like it could be compostable and is not allowed to have those colorings and marks. And this is hopefully going to push forward the compostable composting in the state of Colorado, because right now a lot of people do not take any types of compostables, including Compost Queen. And that's because it just causes so much contamination that because of the discrepancies and the lack of education for people understanding what actually is compostable. This one, SB 23-919, went into effect this past year, and it is the organics, what is it? The research. Basically, they're doing research to impact what is going into the landfills, like the types of organics that are going into landfills and the best way to divert those. So that's actually already going on right now. All right, so now we're going to talk a little bit about grants. These were the ones that came off the top of my head. So the CDPHE for the state of Colorado is a great resource. They have quite a few for recycling, composting, etc. In that category. Forward being one of them. Forward is the one that I got, so I'll talk about that in just a minute. But there's all of these other places, whether they are, national organizations, government organizations, whatever. A lot of organizations have these type of grants available for the for the recycling sector, because it's becoming such a thing in our country right now. And so depending on what you're doing, USDA has stuff for composting right now. Department of Energy, they're definitely looking how to recycle things. EPA, they have all sorts of types of recycling things. And then when you get out of, the governmental types, you can find so many more even, which is why I say use Google. You can find women-owned small business grants. You can find, sustainability grants. You can find, and these are just organizations that you can just find by looking. There's so many out there. Like I can't even find them. Sometimes they're really hard to find. I literally have hired an intern to find them for me because they can be so difficult to find. And so basically it takes a lot of time, is my first thing, is finding them. And then 2, it takes a lot of time applying for them, because you kind of have to know what you are talking about, what your project is going to be, what the impacts are going to be, and you have to have that all lined up to apply for these things. So the type of grant I got, again, was the Forward grant, the Front Range Waste Diversion. And honestly, it was my 8th application. I had to apply 8 times to get one. I applied to both the REO and the Forward multiple times, and my 8th one is finally what they awarded. So when you're in that position and you are not being awarded, make sure that you get their feedback. They always offer their feedback as to why you didn't get it. Sometimes it is more robust than others, but use whatever you can get back from that for your next one. Based on that feedback, do your homework, see who did get them, see what they have, what they put down, and what maybe you have in common with that, or what you did completely different. I will tell you, the first grant I applied for, I asked for the ceiling, and when I saw what they were actually giving out, it was much, much lower than that. And so that, kind of got me more into like what I needed to be asking for what they were looking for. It takes a long time, especially because these come out, it's not like it's a monthly thing. It comes out a couple times a year. So you're gonna have to be patient. You're gonna apply, you're gonna get rejected. And then you're gonna have to apply again, and like me, again and again and again and again. When I finally did get one, it was about $200,000. And it paid for everything I showed you in those pictures earlier. It was very equipment based. Which I found is another reason why I got selected, is because of the equipment based. They are shying away from things like hiring employees or contractors, as well as any kind of like services. So like if you need a service for your grant to be operational, like they're shying away from that. The equipment is really where they wanted to go. And so, for example, mine changed actually quite a bit from my original application, because we just had changes over that course of time. Again, you submit a grant, you're not going to hear for like 2 or 3 months. And things change in that time. And so when I was awarded it, I had to tell them things changed. And, they were actually really easy to work with. And so if you do get a grant, make sure that you are in contact with your grant administrator, like as much as possible. Like keep that communication open, because they are there to help you. They already awarded you this money. They want you to be able to use it. And so, like I said, mine changed quite a bit. I had on there a position for a person to help with the grant contract itself, like putting it together and executing it. And they decided to take that off and put it towards more equipment. And so like things can change a lot even after you get it. And as I said, the equipment base is easier because it's a tangible item. Once you purchase something and you have so this is a reimbursement grant, so you have to pay for it, submit a receipt that says it's paid for, and then they will reimburse you. When that's something is, equipment based or tangible based, you buy it, you have it, and you can submit it. It's not like it's work in progress. It's not like it's an employee that you're paying slowly over time. So equipment based is going to be the easiest way to get through the grant process. I started my grant in May, and I am finishing up this month. So it took about, 6 months-ish, for me to go through the process. I know people that were awarded years ago and still haven't gotten through the process yet. And it's because of those little things, that can get in the way of making it go smoothly. Also, once you get a grant, and so like I said, I'm like going to be finished this month. I'm not actually finished because I still have to report. So I think I have to report for 2 years. It might be 3 even, to the grant committee about what they purchased essentially for my facility. Like they want to see the numbers coming out of that. They want to see that it's working, and that what they made the right decision. And so keep that in mind too. Even if you get a grant and you get all your money back, or you get the money up front if it's a different kind of grant, you still might have to be working on it in the future. And then my last bullet point again is be patient, is because all of this did not happen fast. This took years of work, countless hours of application writing. It took so long. So don't get down if you don't get it the first time. Don't get down if you don't get it the second, third, the fourth time even. Like keep trying, just be patient, just keep doing it. Every single grant I submitted was different for different type of project. And I would get feedback, and then I would change it again, and then I would change it again and change it again until I finally got it. So keep at it. It's hard, but it's worth it in the end. Last thing I'm going to talk about really quickly is I also work part-time for the Compost Research and Education Foundation. It is the nonprofit composting, like, for the nation, essentially. They work closely with the United States Composting Council, and they are on the forefront of a lot of what's happening in the composting industry. One of the things that I work specifically with is called the CFTP, which stands for the Composting Field Testing Program. So as I was discussing earlier about the compostable products, And, if they're actually compostable or not, that's actually a program that the CREF is sponsoring to find out, basically. So we hire facilities, or we partner with facilities. We give them a certain test kit to test at their facility, test method, et cetera, all of those things to see if the products break down in their facility. We have facilities all the way from like these tiny CESQ type facilities or like community composter type facilities, all the way up to the ginormous, huge industrial facilities that do hundreds of thousands of tons per year. And it's very interesting to see the differences in what products break down at different types of facilities. So we're always looking for partners. So if you know of a compost facility that is wondering if they should take compostable products, starting here is a really great resource because they can actually do the research themselves, see what works, what doesn't, and then they can make those decisions on what they will accept and not. Another thing that they are currently working on is the test methods for the examination of compost and composting. Otherwise, the TMEC is what I call it because that's very long. But basically, those are the methods that the labs use to actually test compost, feedstocks, et cetera, for the composting process. So when you have a finished compost process, it's supposed to meet, when you have a finished compost product, it's supposed to meet certain standards like carbon nitrogen ratio, moisture, et cetera, like a bunch of different, organic material, all of these different things. This is the test methods that the labs use to find that out. And so it has to be something that everybody uses and that everybody can use in the same way. So it's being updated for for all of the methods because it was written about 30 years ago. Or it started being written about 30 years ago. It's about 20 years old in its publication. And things in labs have changed. There are new ways to test things. There are new machinery to use, et cetera. So that's a big project that the CREF is working on right now as well. The composter operations training course is by far the biggest thing that the CREF does. And it is becoming more and more popular within both the composting world as well as like states. So one of the things that is probably going to be changing in the state of Colorado is you're going to have at least one certified person on site for each facility. I'm not sure if it's either of the certifications or if it's going to only be the CCOM, but it is going to be necessary for everyone to have that at their facility. And the reason being is because we need to make sure that the composting processes that are happening around the state are being done through the best management practices, are being done correctly, are being done in a way and fashion that everyone has the same basic knowledge of. And so, like I said, that is probably going to be going into effect in our own state. So if you're at a composting facility and you don't have a certified person, the next one in Colorado is going to be next fall, about a year from now. So, start looking for that and definitely go. I believe it's going to be on the Western Slope. So the people over there will have better access. And then obviously us on the Front Range can head over there if we want to. The other thing that they do is they sponsor International Compost Awareness Week. Every year they have a poster contest. This is what won in 2023. And it is the actual week is in May. It's like the first or second week of May each year. And it's where we bring together all of the composting network, all of the people that are interested in it, and spread the word because not everyone knows about composting. Not every state has composting laws, et cetera. And so we're just trying to get the word out, trying to make it more accessible, and give people more education on it through this foundation. So yeah, a lot going on. But thank you for listening. I will take questions and answer, or I will try to answer all your questions now. And yeah, I hope you all learned at least something. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jamie. You are seriously an inspiration with all your perseverance that you've gone through and all that you're doing. I guess we can start with some of the questions in the chat that popped up. So I think Carolyn with Compost wanted to know about the pipe in your static aerated pile and how you keep it from breaking with skid steer, front end loaders, or just turning or removing the pile.
Sure. So they're made out of what is it? HDPE, I believe. So they're pretty sturdy. They're pretty thick. The idea is if you do accidentally run over it with a front loader, it won't break, especially because it's very expensive. But the way that we do it is once the pipe is on the ground, we make sure that our tractor straddles it. So one tire on each side, we go forward, we do our dump, and we go straight back again. That, we really try to prohibit running over it. And that's the best way that we have found so far. Also, when you are done with the pile, there's a way to actually remove it. So you can unhook it on one side and then, attach it to your tractor on the other side and take it out. So that way, when you're moving everything that's already been through the composting process, you don't have to worry about the pipe anymore.
That's awesome. Can I ask another question too?
Yeah.
I saw recently the next cycle application is up and they had a picture of you as one of the graduates from the next cycle thing. What would you recommend that program? Was it useful for you as a composter?
Yeah. Honestly, I think one of the best things I got from it was networking. So I got to know people that I didn't know before. I got, doing the whole program made other people see what I was doing and contacted me. And then their actual little business incubator was very helpful too, because I was able to like straighten out my business plan and put it in a new direction that was going to be better for us long term than what like it started as 5 years ago. As a business owner, your business plan changes over time. And so that really helped me get on track with that as well.
Awesome. Anyone else? I
Oh,
have a few questions.
and I will say, Next Cycle Colorado is a grant funded project. You have to apply to get in, but once you're in, the grant funding like pays for you to be in it. It's really helpful for anyone in the recycling industry that has a business that they're trying to get off the ground, essentially. So if you have an idea or a startup, it's a really great place to take your business, even if you've been in business for a while and you just want to go in a different direction, maybe. But it's a great place to take and get feedback and get to know people in the industry, get other outsiders' ideas. There's usually someone in your cohort that is similar to what you're doing, and so you can bounce ideas off of each other as business owners. It's really neat. I would recommend it.
Yeah, I would just say I went this year and let's just say 8 out of 10 of, I don't know exactly how many people participate, but most of them have been into contact with us and said like, we're working with the Circular Economy Development Center to grow our business. And like a lot of people have reached out to all the participants and like wanted to help them more, even if they didn't win, next cycle.
Also, if you are a graduate of Next Cycle, you get extra points on your Forward and RREO grant applications. So that could have been a reason I won as well.
All the more reasons. Apply for Next Cycle.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the information is coming out soon, or the application is out. So I can put that in the chat. You guys can check it out. All right. Any other questions from anyone else? I know I have a few, but I'll wait and see if anyone else does.
This is Carolyn. Do you where do you get your stuff that you process from, and do you truck it in from various points or what?
So we are what's considered a hauler and a processor. So we actually collect curbside. So people get their little bucket or their bin, they fill it up with their food waste, and we come collect it. And then we take it to one of our sites, or right now we're bringing it all back to our ASP site because we're trying to get it going. And that's where we get all of our stuff. We have most of our clients are residential. And we just started our commercial project. So we're getting more commercial clients as we speak, really. And so that's how we do it. And so you do have to have a hauler's license, and then you do have to have the facility permit license or facility permits as well.
So how far away do you collect?
So we do curbside in Fort Collins and Timnath, and then we have drop-off locations in, we have a couple in Fort Collins, we have Windsor, we have Loveland.
So you wouldn't come as far as Estes Park.
Not at this time, no.
Would anyone?
I don't think anyone does go to Estes at this time.
Clementine's out of Erie. I mean, or is that right? They're not too far away. They might.
If you had enough people on board to get them to want to do that, yeah, try contacting Andy at Clementine.
Andy at Clementine, you have any idea what the minimum number of people would be?
No, that's going to be based on what he wants. Yeah, it's going to be super individualized. Because, maybe he'll go there for 10, maybe he won't go, for until you have like 50. So it really depends.
Yeah, right. Since we have bears up here, I don't think doing the actual composting up here is ideal.
Correct. Yeah, and so Estes is one of the few situations I would recommend an in-vessel system, potentially.
Yeah, they're very expensive, aren't they?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe Ainsley, if you're listening in, if you want to share with Carolyn what you're doing in Aspen as far as bear proofing and composting.
Yeah, so we mandated the use of certified wildlife proof containers. We don't accept the use of the what are they? They're not proof, they're certified wildlife, what's the word? Resistant, because resistant just doesn't work. And those are like the plastic poly carts that have that snap kind of latching mechanism on the top. So we require the steel containers that latch and lock, and those have proven to be most successful in keeping bears out. But yeah, I'm happy to answer any other questions related to that.
And then where does it go when those containers are emptied?
We have two haulers. We have Evergreen Zero Waste and Mountain Waste that will pick up and empty that organic material and bring it up to the Picken County Solid Waste Center, where they have an industrial composting WinRAR system.
All right, thank you.
All right. Anyone else? Any other questions?
Got another one if nobody else does.
Go ahead.
What do you use for your personal carbon and nitrogen ratio for your piles?
So our food waste is all of our nitrogen, essentially. And then we get free chip drops from different landscapers in town. So that's some of our carbon. We also do leaf collections from our customers, and we stockpile that all year long. Like we literally just ran out, which is great because we're about to get a bunch again. So we literally stockpile it, we save it, we use it kind of sparingly because it's like the best carbon additive you can get is the dried leaves. So anyone that's like starting to think about compost, I always tell them to start in the fall and collect that carbon before getting going, because that's like the hardest thing to find. The other thing that we have carbon-based is our farm partner waste. So like when fields get cleared or gardens get cleared or whatever, we leave that out to dry to make sure it's brown and carbon-based, and we'll use that as well in our mix. But all of our nitrogen is our food waste.
Carolyn, I know you said you cut out. Did that answer?
It came back in when she said something about leaves. Would you mind saying what your ratio is again?
Oh, so our ratio for our, so for example, if we were to be doing our stuff at our farms, like not the ASP, it's pretty much at about It's between 30 and 40% nitrogen, which means 60 to 70% carbon. In our new ASP system, we can do 50-50.
Okay. Thank
Carolyn, do you have your own composting business?
Oh, oh, we don't have our own piles, but we are looking into it a lot right now. Because we've heard the somewhat rumor, but probably what's going to happen is regional landfill probably follow. And so we won't have a composting site. We can take what we collect from our customers anymore. Keep it in the
All right, might have lost her there.
I'm just gonna add on to that
Alright.
a little bit. I hope you don't mind, Carolyn, but the reason why facilities aren't taking things is because of the compostables issue again. A1 Organics, for example, they banned compostables. They're only taking food and vegetative waste, nothing that is like man-made. So no papers, no plastics, no anything, even if it is certified compostable. And so that's why the haulers are having an issue, because the people that they haul for are used to putting those things into their bins. But if the facility isn't going to take them, then the haulers have nowhere to take them. And so they want to start their own facilities that will take them so that they can continue their hauling business. Is that right, Carolyn? Like essentially?
Sorry, hard to get the unmute button. Yeah, that's right. Like we pick up for a hospital, for example, and it's really important for them. All of their waste from their cafeteria is greenware, and all of that would have to go to the landfill. And there are other customers like that. There are schools that we work with that have compostable trays, lunch trays. And yeah, it would just be a big deal for us if we couldn't compost compostables.
Awesome. I have a question for you, Jamie. Do you sell the finished compost, or what do you do with your finished product?
So up until this year, most of it has, so we have a relationship with our farm partners where everything that is produced on their site, they can take 50% of the finished product. The other 50% goes back to Compost Queen, and that in majority has gone back to our customers for free on our customer appreciation days, which are twice a year. So they can come pick up compost, use it in their own. And it's like, you contributed to it, you should be able to use it. Now that we have our ASP and we're getting more commercial contracts, we're going to have more than that. And so, yes, we're going to be able to start selling it. We're hoping to sell it in bulk for the majority. We're hoping to stockpile for the spring, so that way people in the agricultural industry can come, people with large gardens can come, CSAs, etc.
Awesome. And then maybe a question about the other end of the spectrum. Let's say you don't have a large garden or yard. Do you have any recommendations for other uses of compost besides that? Like, I don't know.
So we have like a little bag. It's like, I don't know, it's like this big, it's 16 ounces. And we call that our houseplant bag. So you can take that and top dress your houseplant dirt. I would recommend that you don't ever touch your compost to your plant stem that's coming out of the dirt, because compost retains so much moisture. You don't want to rot the stem. So keep about an inch or so away from the stem, but top dress everything else that would be in your potted plant. And then just water as normal, and the nutrients from the compost will percolate down into the soil and feed the roots. And you can do that up to like 4 times a year, so like once a season.
Awesome. That's good to know. I've always wondered, like, do I have to completely repot? So it's good to know that it would just percolate down.
Yeah, and if you do repot, then you can always add some compost in. You never want to add more than about 20 to 30% compost in the entire like mix. But that's a good way to incorporate it as well to keep them healthy.
Awesome. Perfect. And so I guess, have you ever talked with the city about providing compost for their operations at all? Like a kind of partnership there?
So municipalities are difficult to deal with. In order to work with a municipality, they have to put out an RFP, a request for proposal. And then you have to be selected. And then you get to work with them. My city has not put out an RFP for this. I have talked to them multiple times and they are not interested in doing that at this time.
Okay, cool. I just know that's something that a lot of the compost operators are kind of dealing with, is how to get their product to the city. So
Yep. It's harder than you would think.
yeah, it is. I didn't know that you'd have to do an RFP. So
Yep.
good to know. I guess if there are any other questions, I'll ask my last question. And then okay. Not seeing anyone on mute. So what made you want to start your composting business in the first place?
What a fun question. So I moved to the state of Colorado in 2015, and I am from California. And in California, composting is way easier because of the climate. You can compost all year. You don't really even have to work at it very hard. Like, you don't like all of those parameters I talked about, like you don't have to know like any of those. And so you just kind of throw it in your garden or in a pile or whatever, and it kind of just does its thing as long as you like are kind of doing it right. When I moved to Colorado, that was not the case. And so it's much harder here, especially the fact that you cannot really compost in your own backyard in the winter months. And so I got kind of frustrated with it because it just wasn't working out. And I retaught myself how to do it here. And once I had a process that was working, I realized the only way to keep it going during the winter is to increase the mass of it. So I started composting for my friends and neighbors all in my backyard, so that way I could keep it going all winter long. And then once I did that, like I saw, so I was on vacation visiting my grandmother in Indiana, and I saw a flyer at a coffee shop that was for a community composting program where this like old green truck would go around and pick up buckets and compost them all at one place. And so that's what really sparked. I started doing research. I saw that there was a ton of these things around the country being done. And so that's what really sparked it. I was like, I'm kind of doing that already now. So yeah, so it kind of just grew organically by all of those things happening together. And then once I started the company, then I started, going to like conferences and webinars and like teaching myself, at a much higher level than just like a backyard composting. So became sort of an expert in the field over the years.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. I mean, Fort Collins is at least. It's area. And thank you for presenting